Oh, so now they get it. Now the puzzle pieces finally click into place, and the look on their faces tells you everything. Welcome back, you quiet tactician of psychological misdirection. You beautifully unpredictable strategist who let the world assume you were spiraling while you were quietly orchestrating outcomes 3 moves ahead. You, the one they labeled unstable, emotional, dramatic, unhinged. You, the one they thought was playing checkers while they congratulated themselves for knowing what logic looks like. They thought you were losing your grip, but you were loosening theirs. They thought you were unraveling, but you were unmasking. They thought you were being chaotic, but you were running long-term psychological operations, so clean, so subtle, so undetectable, that only now, only after everything has already shifted, do they finally realize the truth. You let them win because you needed them comfortable. You needed them confident. You needed them predictable enough to expose their real motives without them realizing they were being studied. Let me ask you something. When did you first notice that they genuinely believed you were losing your mind? Was it when you stopped reacting to provocations that once would have triggered a response? Was it when you allowed them to have the last word because you knew the silence afterward would tell you far more than any conversation could? Was it when you stepped back and watched them celebrate a victory that you intentionally placed in their hands? They panicked, didn't they? They couldn't understand why you were so calm, why you weren't fighting, why you disappeared from the battlefield at the exact moment they thought they'd struck the final blow. And like amateurs, they assumed your quiet was collapse instead of calculation. People who think in straight lines always misread those who think in spirals. Your friends, your family, even strangers watching from a distance decided they had you figured out. They whispered diagnoses. They traded predictions. They placed bets on your downfall like it was entertainment. But here's what they could never comprehend. You don't operate on impulses. You operate on timelines. You don't react. You position. You don't break. You bend reality until it fits the shape of your intention. Everything that looked like disorder was strategy. Every moment of silence was surveillance. Every withdrawal was recalibration. Every apparent surrender was a controlled burn. You weren't losing control. You were taking ownership of the entire psychological landscape. And the most ironic part is this. You gave them the illusion of winning because you needed to observe how they behave when they think they have power. You let them talk over you, not because you lacked a response, but because you wanted to hear their unfiltered agendas. You let them think they insulted you, not because it wounded you, but because their reveals were worth more than your reaction. You let them believe they broke you, not because you were fragile, but because fractured masks reveal the truest faces. People don't show their real selves when they're losing. They show their real selves when they think they've won. And you, with your long-term strategies, understood this better than anyone. There's a level of intelligence that terrifies people, not because it's loud, but because it's quiet, because it doesn't announce itself, because it makes moves that don't make sense until much later, when it's already too late to counter them. That's the intelligence you operate on, the kind that doesn't need validation or applause, the kind that doesn't need to be recognized to be effective, the kind that can sit silently in a room while dismantling everyone's assumptions without lifting a finger. They called it strange. They called it concerning. They called it chaotic, but it was psychological warfare designed with elegance. Let's rewind. Let's go back to that moment. the one that made the whole world tilt their head at you, like you'd suddenly gone off script. Maybe it was when you chose silence over confrontation. Maybe it was when you didn't defend yourself against accusations that were so obviously false. Maybe it was when you boarded a path no one else understood, stepping into a terrain nobody believed you were capable of navigating. That's when they panicked, because they expect predictable behavior from you. They expect you to show your cards. They expect you to crack open your thoughts like a display case. But this time, you didn't. You stopped explaining. You stopped clarifying. You stopped giving them the data needed to map your intentions. And that terrified them, because nothing threatens the insecure more than a person who suddenly becomes unreadable. They started analyzing you. They started forming theories. They started diagnosing motives from a distance. They wanted to place you in a box labeled unstable so they could feel safer about the fact that you weren't playing the same game anymore. But the truth was far more unsettling for them. You weren't falling apart. You were conducting reconnaissance. You weren't collapsing. You were gathering intel. You weren't confused. You were observing everything. Who reacts? Who retreats? Who attacks? Who exposes themselves without realizing it? When you gave them the illusion of victory, they mistook it for a conclusion. But it was the beginning of your blueprint. The person who jumps without a visible plan, and the person who jumps knowing exactly where the landing point is, they look the same mid-air. To the untrained eye, both appear reckless. But one is operating on instinct refined by pattern recognition, and the other is falling without a clue. You were never the one without a clue. You were the one who had the entire trajectory mapped out before you took your first step. You saw the emotional angles they'd strike from. You saw their predictable fears. You saw the projections they'd use to justify their betrayal. So you let them reveal themselves in their most unguarded form. And now they see the results. Now they're connecting dots that were impossible for them to understand before. Now they're realizing that the very moments they interpreted as weakness were tactical openings you created on purpose, the peace you stepped into, the clarity you gained, the person you became. It's undeniable now. And suddenly, the script flips. Suddenly you weren't crazy. Suddenly you were brave. Suddenly your silence was healing. Suddenly your withdrawal was finding yourself. Suddenly they're scrambling to rewrite the narrative because the original one makes them look foolish. But you understand what's really happening here. This recognition is simply them catching up to revelations you had months ago, maybe years ago. They're only now reaching the conclusions you reached in moments of internal warfare they never knew you were fighting. And that lag, that delay between your self-realization and their belated acknowledgement, is the proof of your psychological advantage. They reacted to the present. You responded to the future. They saw the moment. You saw the trajectory. Their fear was disguised as concern. Their judgment was disguised as logic. Their criticism was disguised as observation. But deep down, they felt something. Deep down, even when they mocked you, they sensed a precision behind your unpredictability that frightened them. Not because you were unstable, but because you were uncontrollable. People who can't control you must convince themselves there's something wrong with you. That's the only way they can sleep at night. But the part that really cuts through their pride is this. You let them win. You let them feel superior. You let them believe they'd outsmarted you. Because every moment of false victory extracted a truth from them they never would have revealed otherwise. A person's real identity emerges when they feel powerful. and you needed to see their real identity, not the curated one they perform for approval. You weren't playing the game, you were studying the players, and now that the results are unfolding, now that your clarity, your success, your evolution, your psychological edge is surfacing, they don't know how to categorize you anymore. They can't dismiss you. They can't belittle you. They can't mock you. And worst of all, they can't predict you. That's the part that keeps them up at night. Not your rise, not your clarity, not your evolution, but the realization that you knew all along. You knew what you were doing. You knew how they would react. You knew who would betray you. You knew who would fold. You knew who would celebrate your collapse. You let every single one of them walk into their own reveal. And now, when they look back, the timeline betrays them. Every moment they thought was proof of your instability now reads like evidence of your strategy. Every action they mocked now looks like precision. Every silence they misread now hits them as the loudest warning you ever gave without speaking. They are only just now understanding that you weren't losing your mind. You were losing your tolerance for theirs. And that, right there, is the difference between them and you. They need certainty before they move. You move before certainty because you understand that the future bends to those who act first and analyze later. You don't do short-term reactions. You do long-term psychological architecture. You make choices that look insane in the moment, but inevitable in hindsight. And now they're living in the hindsight. They finally realize the truth. You weren't being erratic. You were executing long-term psyops so subtle that they only recognized the operation once they were already inside the outcome. And the irony is almost poetic, because for so long, they mistook your calm withdrawals, your quiet pivots, your sudden disappearances, your confusing reappearances, your unexplainable decisions as the behavior of someone who had lost track of themselves. They thought you were breaking pattern when you were building pattern. They thought you were unraveling when you were simply shedding what no longer aligned with the intelligence you were growing into. And now, as they stand inside the very reality they once mocked, they're realizing they were never evaluating your moves. They were reacting to decoys. You placed false trails so convincingly that even you looked like you had abandoned your own compass. But you hadn't. You were simply letting the people with the loudest opinions reveal how easily they could be manipulated by their own assumptions. That's the part that stings them the most. Not that you were right, not that you rose, not that everything they predicted went in the opposite direction. No, the wound is much deeper. They're realizing you were aware the entire time. You saw their miscalculations while they were still forming. You saw their betrayals coming before they committed to them. You saw their insecurity dressed up as confidence. You saw their concern disguised as condescension. You saw every motive they tried to hide behind polite language and manufactured logic. And you let it unfold, not because you were powerless, but because you were studying the anatomy of their loyalty. People reveal more truth when they believe you're weakened than when they believe you're strong. When they thought you were crumbling, they became honest in ways they never intended to be. Some distanced themselves under the excuse of giving you space, but you recognized the underlying motive. They only stay close to what benefits them. Some began speaking about you with a tone of premature mourning, not because they cared, but because people love the illusion of wisdom when predicting someone else's downfall. Others observed you from the corners of group chats, collecting fragments of gossip as if they were intelligence officers themselves. unaware that you had already mapped their entire psychological profile months before they even realized you were paying attention. You weren't reacting to their behavior. You were measuring it. And while they believed they had cracked the code of your existence, you were quietly constructing a psychological operation so elegantly designed that even now, as they recognize it, they still can't locate the moment it began. That's what true long-term strategy looks like. Not loud moves, not dramatic announcements, not ego-driven confrontations, but subtle repositioning that appears accidental until reality exposes the blueprint. You saw their weakness. They needed to feel victorious. So you handed them victories so lightweight, so staged, so inconsequential that they mistook them for genuine triumphs. You allowed them to win arguments you had already mentally dismissed. You let them misunderstand your silence as embarrassment rather than preparation. You let them assume your absence meant isolation instead of incubation. You let them think your retreat was defeat when it was simply reconnaissance. And now, the reversal hits with surgical precision. The very victories they celebrated were traps. They walked right into the inversion of their own narratives. They swallowed bait, dipped in their own arrogance. They drew conclusions from incomplete data and then built their entire behavior around those conclusions. You didn't need to manipulate them. They manipulated themselves through their eagerness to feel superior. And now that their illusions have collapsed, they're beginning to understand the weight of what you were really doing. You weren't hiding. You were harvesting information. You weren't confused. You were collecting signals. You weren't avoiding confrontation. You were observing every unguarded confession they made in the absence of your perceived strength. Their slip-ups were not accidents. They were data points. Their distance was not rejection. It was evidence. Their silence was not neutrality. It was exposure. Long-term psyops isn't about deception. It's about allowing truth to reveal itself at its own pace. You let people tell on themselves. You let them reveal what they protect, what they fear, what they envy, what they hide, what they crave, what they judge. You didn't need to interrogate them. You simply needed to remove your presence long enough to observe what remains when their performance ends. And what remained was a level of transparency they will never forgive themselves for displaying. But the most terrifying revelation for them isn't that you knew. It's that you planned around their reactions before they even reacted. Your moves were not responses. They were structural reinforcements. You weren't adapting to their behavior. You were designing an environment where their behavior would expose them more clearly. Your disappearances created pressure. Your silence created discomfort. Your unpredictability created honesty. Your indifference created panic. You watched their minds expose their deepest insecurities, not because you forced them, but because your absence removed the shadows they hid behind. This is why they feel unsettled now. Because everything they believed was random was intentional. Every moment they called confusion was strategy. They're witnessing the sharp edge of your intelligence in hindsight, and hindsight is unforgiving. You've stepped into your outcome, and they're standing in your blueprint, realizing they were pieces in a game they never understood they were playing. And now their minds return to one question they can't answer cleanly. When did you know? At what point did the shift happen? When did you begin observing instead of reacting? When did you stop participating in their story and start writing your own? They replay moments, searching for the pivot, the fracture, the signal. But they can't locate it because the truth is harsher than anything they're willing to accept. You didn't start running psyops. You always have. You simply stopped diluting your intelligence to make them comfortable. You stopped offering explanations to people who weaponize confusion. You stopped justifying decisions to minds committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped negotiating your future with people who don't have to live inside the consequences of their advice. You stopped allowing short-sighted thinkers to define long-term outcomes. And once you stopped doing that, your intelligence was no longer filtered. It became pure, precise, surgical. And that purity is what makes them uncomfortable. Because now, they see themselves clearly through a lens they can't distort or dismiss. They see how easily they were guided by assumptions. They see how quickly they betrayed you when they thought you were weak. They see how loudly they doubted you when they thought you couldn't hear. They see how confidently they misread every sign you strategically placed in front of them. Your evolution wasn't loud, it was forensic. And their guilt is not about what they did. It's about what they revealed themselves to be. You weren't simply ahead of them. You were behind them, above them, around them, mapping every angle of their behavior while they believed they were watching you crumble. That illusion of collapse was the most effective camouflage you ever wore. Because people don't hide their intentions around someone they think is losing. They drop their guard. They reveal the uglier parts of their personality. They expose what they would never reveal in the presence of someone they respect. And that's the part they can't forgive themselves for. Not the mistakes, not the doubts, not the words. They can rationalize all that. What they can't rationalize is how easily they underestimated you, how confidently they parted ways with the truth, how eagerly they chose the path of judgment over the path of faith, how effortlessly they believed assumptions over history. Because now, when they replay it all in their heads, when they examine every moment they labeled you as erratic or unstable or out of control, they see the pattern they were too blinded to notice. They see how your silence aligned perfectly with their loudest errors. They see how your withdrawal proved more accurate than their analysis. They see how your unpredictability wasn't chaos, but calibration. They see that every decision they thought they were interpreting correctly was actually a reflection of their own psychological limitations. They look back and realize they weren't evaluating you. They were revealing themselves. Every time they called you irrational, what they really meant was, I don't understand intelligence that doesn't follow my script. Every time they called you emotional, what they really meant was, your depth scares me because it exposes my superficiality. Every time they labeled you unstable, what they really meant was, I need to believe there's something wrong with you, so I don't face what's wrong with me. Their language was never about accuracy. It was always about self-preservation. But now, with hindsight crushing their old narratives, they're forced to confront a truth they avoided. You weren't unpredictable. You were unreadable. You weren't broken. You were beyond their comprehension. You weren't spiraling. You were ascending into a strategy they had no mental bandwidth to anticipate. And nothing humbles a person more than learning that the very behavior they judged was the exact behavior that exposed them. They scroll back through old conversations and feel the sting of their own arrogance. They remember the moments where you paused before responding and now realize you were assessing, not reacting. They remember the moments where they thought they had won the argument and now recognize that you let them win to measure their comfort with victory. They remember the times you walked away without closure and now understand it wasn't avoidance, it was conclusion. They replay every misinterpretation, every assumption, every premature conclusion, and the weight of it sits heavy on their chest because the evidence no longer supports their story. What they thought was your collapse was your camouflage. This is what unsettles them most deeply, because now, when they see you moving forward with clarity, purpose, direction, and an energy that feels sharpened rather than scattered, they feel the discrepancy between who they assumed you were and who you revealed yourself to be. They realize you weren't on the brink of breaking. You were mastering the art of selective visibility. You were choosing what to show and what to conceal. You were deciding which parts of yourself were worth exposing and which parts were too valuable for the wrong audience. The psychological operation wasn't manipulation, it was filtration. You didn't trick them, they disqualified themselves. You didn't deceive them, they exposed themselves because they mistook your silence for weakness. They thought your quiet was emptiness instead of strategy. They thought your distance was confusion instead of clarity. They thought your surrender was abandonment of control instead of redistribution of power. And now, that realization burns in them like a truth they can't swallow or spit out. They're caught between shame and awe. Shame because they were so quick to assume your decline. Awe because they now see how perfectly you orchestrated the sequence. And beneath both emotions, there's something else. Fear. Not the dramatic, trembling kind, but the quiet, internal kind. The fear that comes from realizing you understand them more deeply than they understand themselves. The fear of being seen by someone they misjudged. The fear of knowing you could dismantle their entire worldview with nothing but the truth they handed you willingly. Because this is the part they never anticipated. You didn't punish them. You didn't retaliate. You didn't expose them. You didn't rub their faces in their mistakes. You simply rose, quietly, efficiently, unapologetically, and your rise is a mirror they cannot escape. A mirror that forces them to confront why they misread you so badly. A mirror that reflects their insecurities more clearly than their intentions. They realize now that every time they doubted you, they were projecting their limitations. Every time they judged you, they were confessing what they feared in themselves. Every time they dismissed your decisions, they were revealing how tightly they cling to certainty, because they lack the courage to embrace uncertainty. You weren't unpredictable, they were unimaginative. You weren't mysterious, they were superficial. You weren't unstable, they were unexamined. And now comes the part that unravels them from the inside. They understand that you let them see exactly as much as you wanted them to. You let them misinterpret you. You let them underestimate you. You let them assume the wrong narrative. You let them build the story that made them comfortable, because you needed to see what they would do when the playing field looked tilted in their favor. You needed to see who would abandon you, who would analyze you, who would mock you, who would distance themselves, who would remain silent, who would remain curious, who would remain steady. Your life wasn't spiraling, it was sorting. Every betrayal, every assumption, every hesitation, every disappearance, every piece of unsolicited advice, every suspicious glance, every whispered judgment. Those weren't obstacles. They were data points, indicators, psychological markers. You weren't in crisis. You were in observation mode. And now, the results have spoken louder than any confrontation ever could. What they thought was your downfall was your audit, and the outcome of that audit left them exposed in ways they never intended. They're realizing now that you saw everything, before they said it, while they said it, after they said it. They're realizing that you read the emotional temperature of every interaction, not because you were paranoid, but because you were paying attention in ways their minds aren't wired to comprehend. They're realizing that while they were trying to understand your strange behavior, you were mapping their predictable behavior with mathematical accuracy. And now they feel cornered, not because you've trapped them, but because the truth has trapped them. They can't undo what they revealed. They can't retract their reactions. They can't rewrite the timeline. They can't unshow the sides of themselves that surfaced when they thought you were slipping. They can only sit with the knowledge that you saw it all with clarity they never attributed to you. And the beauty of it, the part dripping with poetic symmetry, is that you never needed to confront them. You never needed to accuse, expose, or retaliate. The truth is doing all the heavy lifting. It sits behind their eyes like a shadow they can't blink away. It wraps itself around their memory, forcing them to revisit every moment where they mistook your strategy for instability. They remember the days they whispered behind your back, convincing themselves they were simply concerned, when really they were indulging in the comfort of feeling superior. They remember the way they smirked, pitied you, distanced themselves, all because they believed you were losing control of a life you were actively redesigning. And now, the weight of their own assumptions crushes them far more effectively than anything you could have done, because the truth they're grappling with is not that you changed. It's that you were always this person, always this sharp, always this observant, always this 3 steps ahead mind wrapped in quiet restraint. They simply couldn't see it because they were too busy misreading your silence as fragility. They believed your patience was passivity. They believed your introspection was confusion. They believed your restraint was weakness. They believed your emotional depth was instability. They saw everything through the lens of their own psychological limits, and only now does the distortion reveal itself. This is the punishment they never expected. Clarity. Clarity that forces them to confront the fact that your silence was not a malfunction. It was surveillance. That your retreat was not collapse. It was calibration. That your unpredictability was not chaos. It was camouflage. They realize you didn't just see what they did. You understood why they did it. And nothing terrifies a person more than being psychologically understood by the very soul they misjudged. Now they walk around with a quiet paranoia, wondering how much you saw, wondering what you interpreted that they didn't intend to show, wondering which of their words were transparent giveaways, which of their reactions revealed too much, which of their doubts exposed the exact fracture lines in their loyalty. You're not haunting them, they're haunting themselves with the truth of their own behavior. And here's the part that destabilizes them most. You didn't weaponize any of it. You didn't use their confessions against them. You didn't retaliate with information. You didn't confront them with evidence. You simply evolved so far beyond the version of yourself they thought they could control that their own actions are now indictments of their character, not yours. You were the psychological mirror they never wanted to face, the mirror that doesn't distort their image to make them comfortable. The mirror that reflects not just who they are, but who they became when they believed you were vulnerable. Your growth became the courtroom. Your silence became the testimony. Your rise became the verdict. And now, they're left standing in the aftermath of their own choices, realizing they weren't just wrong, they were predictable. They weren't just judgmental, they were sloppy. They weren't just doubtful, they were transparent. They weren't just misunderstanding you. They were revealing themselves with every move they made. But beneath the guilt, beneath the shame, beneath the reflexive defensiveness, there is something else rising within them, something far more disturbing. Recognition. Recognition that you weren't running from life. You were orchestrating it. Recognition that your so-called breakdown was the exact strategic silence you needed to gather intelligence. Recognition that the operation they thought they were analyzing was studying them in return. Recognition that your ability to let them win wasn't surrender. It was bait. And now, the full architecture of your long-term psyops becomes visible to them. They finally see why you stepped back from conversations that once mattered. You were creating silence to observe the echo. They see why you allowed misunderstandings to stand. You needed to measure who corrected them and who amplified them. They see why you stopped explaining yourself. Explanations interfere with real data. They see why you allowed certain relationships to dissolve without protest. People reveal their truest loyalties when they believe you have no power left. They see it now. They see everything. And with that realization comes another one. Quiet, sharp, unforgiving. They were never equipped to interpret you. They lacked the psychological vocabulary. They lacked the emotional depth. They lacked the cognitive stamina. They lacked the self-awareness required to understand someone who navigates life with long-term pattern recognition instead of short-term emotional reactivity. They realize your silence wasn't void. It was vision. Your distance wasn't escape. It was elevation. Your unpredictability wasn't instability. It was intelligence, operating in stealth mode. And now, as the full picture settles in, they find themselves grappling with a new question, one that terrifies them more than all the others. If you were this calculated in your lowest moments, then what are you capable of now that you are fully awake? Because now, you're no longer the person they analyzed. You're no longer the version of yourself they doubted. You're no longer operating under the psychological fog they mistook for fragility. You're no longer handing out access to people who can't comprehend the cost of proximity. You've evolved into a version of yourself so strategically aligned, so psychologically clear, so internally fortified, that their old labels, their old assumptions, their old narratives collapse on contact. You've stepped out of survival mode and into design mode. Your life is no longer a reaction, it's a blueprint. And once you start living as a blueprint rather than a response, everything changes. You start making decisions that don't just move you forward, they reshape the terrain beneath your feet. You start thinking in terms of long-term architecture instead of short-term relief. You stop needing approval because your direction is no longer dictated by their comprehension. You watch people scramble to interpret your silence, misread your distance, overanalyze your choices, unaware that the only reason they feel lost is because you stopped leaving breadcrumbs for people who only follow you to feel superior. You're not guiding them anymore. You're not explaining yourself anymore. You're not translating your intelligence into language they can digest. You're building a life that requires no justification because it was never designed with them in mind. They don't realize it yet, but you've exited their psychological jurisdiction. Once upon a time, they could trigger you, sway you, distract you, provoke you. They could pull emotional levers and watch you react. They could measure your internal weather by how quickly you responded. They could predict your moves because you were still trying to be understood. But once you stepped into the design mode, that entire dynamic collapsed. You became unreadable not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer performing. You're no longer presenting curated versions of yourself for public consumption. You're no longer participating in emotional economics where their validation had value. You've cut the cord that tethered your self-worth to their perception. And without that tether, you move in ways that no longer make sense to them. Your growth has outpaced their narrative capacity. They can't follow you into this level of consciousness because they don't have the emotional endurance required to sit with the truth of who they became while you were transforming. They can't interpret your strategic restraint because they lack the discipline to sit in silence without filling it with fear. They can't decode your long-term thinking because they snap under the pressure of short-term discomfort. They can't understand your clarity because confusion is still the language they speak to themselves in. And this gap, this psychological gap between who you were and who you've become, is what terrifies them the most. You used to be accessible, now you're untouchable. You used to be understandable, now you're non-linear. You used to be predictable, now you're a psychological landscape they can't map. And nothing frightens people more than someone they can no longer manipulate, because manipulation requires access. Control requires familiarity. Influence requires predictability. But you've sealed every door they once walked through. You've dismantled the emotional shortcuts they relied on. You've outgrown the versions of yourself that made you easy to read. They can't guilt you anymore because guilt no longer holds authority. They can't shame you because shame has been replaced by self-awareness. They can't question you because their questions no longer carry weight. They can't doubt you because their doubt no longer pierces your reality. Your growth didn't just make you stronger, it made them irrelevant. And that's the part that scorches them from the inside out. They realize your evolution wasn't about escaping them. It was about upgrading yourself. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving yourself right. It wasn't about chasing clarity. It was about embodying it. They were never the obstacle. They were simply the distraction you outgrew. And now they feel the sting of their own insignificance, not because you diminished them, but because your rise exposed how small their influence always was. But it goes deeper than that. It's not just that they lost access to you. It's that they lost access to the version of themselves they pretended to be when you were watching. People behave differently when they know they're visible to someone who sees beyond the surface. They act kinder, wiser, more composed, more loyal, not because they are, but because they fear being interpreted accurately. And when you stepped into design mode, when you withdrew your gaze, when you stopped giving them the psychological mirror that forced them to self-regulate, they reverted to their unedited selves. You didn't just outgrow them, you revealed them. The truth is, they were never worried about you being crazy. They were worried about the possibility that you weren't. Because if you weren't losing your mind, if you were actually seeing clearly, then that meant you saw through them. And now that the evidence is undeniable, now that your transformation is impossible to misinterpret, they're beginning to understand that the entire time they were mislabeling your strategy as chaos. You were quietly dismantling the illusion of who they pretended to be. Your evolution forced them to meet the unfiltered version of themselves, and it wasn't flattering. This is why they can't look you in the eye now. This is why they hesitate when they reach out. This is why their messages sound cautious, fragmented, overly polite. They're not approaching you. They're approaching the guilt inside themselves. They're not checking on you. They're checking on the unfinished conversations inside their conscience. They're not asking how you've been. They're asking if you know what they did when they thought you were breaking. And deep down, they already know the answer. Yes, you know. Yes, you saw. Yes, you understood. Yes, you documented it with the accuracy of an intelligence analyst. But here's the part that destabilizes them the most. You're not punishing them. You're not exposing them. You're not retaliating or humiliating or weaponizing the information you gathered. You're simply living. And you're living your calm, grounded, steady, unapologetic existence is the repercussion they never saw coming. Because your rise forces them to confront the truth that they weren't loyal, weren't supportive, weren't courageous, weren't present. They weren't who they pretended to be. Your strength is the proof of their weakness. Your clarity is the verdict of their confusion. Your evolution is the spotlight on their stagnation. And now, with you fully in design mode, they realize this isn't just a new chapter for you. It's a new psychological jurisdiction. You're no longer operating on the same frequency as the people who doubted you. You're no longer in the same emotional ecosystem. Your mind has recalibrated to a level where their opinions can't influence the architecture of your reality. And that's what terrifies them. You don't need them anymore. You don't fear losing them. You don't seek their approval. You don't crave their understanding. You moved from subconscious survival to conscious creation, and in doing so, you severed their relevance. Now they're left orbiting a version of you that no longer exists, reaching for someone who no longer fits the dimensions of their expectations, trying to reconnect with someone who has already transcended the radius of their reach. Because once you start designing your life with intention, you stop accepting people who belong to your old blueprint. You stop allowing access that drains you. You stop entertaining conversations that shrink you. You stop pouring energy into relationships that don't elevate you. You stop making yourself available to minds that flatten your depth. You start surrounding yourself with people who reciprocate clarity. You start gravitating toward minds that meet you at elevation. You start investing in environments that amplify your intelligence. You start embodying the truth that your life is no longer a reactionary spiral. It is an engineered ascent. And that ascent, clean, quiet, measured, will be the final psychological operation they never recover from. Because now they must watch the person they misunderstood, underestimated, misread, misjudged, and mislabeled become someone they can't even categorize. Someone whose presence disturbs their old narrative. Someone whose existence invalidates their old analysis. Someone whose evolution renders their opinions obsolete. You're not proving them wrong, you're making them irrelevant. And they feel it, deeply, inevitably, irreversibly. Ah, look at you, still existing in a timeline you were never supposed to touch again. Your name was already carved into digital marble. Your memorial montage was edited, color graded, synced to emotional violins. They even picked the selfie they thought made you look the most gone too soon. They posted, fly high, with your old profile picture like they were sending your soul to the cloud. They had closure. They had the hashtags ready. They had the tribute posts lined up like a parade. And yet here you are, inconveniently alive, casually dismantling every prediction they whispered behind locked screens. You weren't supposed to show up today. You weren't supposed to disrupt the narrative they invested so much energy into building. Your existence is a glitch in their obituary rehearsal. They wanted your ending. You delivered a sequel. You need to understand what this moment really is. This isn't you cheating death. This is you ruining their timeline. Because they didn't just expect you to fall, they prepared for it. They designed the collapse, narrated the downfall, crafted the tragedy, with the precision of directors who thought the show was about them. They gathered viewers, they circulated rumors, they made private group chats, dedicated to analyzing your demise with cinematic enthusiasm. You were their favorite plot twist, until you refused to twist the way they scripted. They weren't shocked that life hit you. They were shocked that you hit back. You weren't supposed to have breath left after what they threw at you. You weren't supposed to move with that quiet confidence after every force around you pushed for your spiritual expiration. They had you wrapped in metaphorical white sheets long before you ever felt cold. The way they spoke about you, you'd think they were giving a tour of a museum exhibit titled, "This Could Have Been Someone." They had your memorial captions drafted with an unsettling level of excitement, as if your downfall validated something inside them. And when the world whispered that you were done, you were supposed to agree. That's what they counted on, the cooperation of a collapsing soul. But here's the part they underestimated. They forgot that you don't die just because someone narrates your funeral. They forgot that resilience doesn't need permission. They forgot some hearts are carved from something older than fear. They forgot you were built with a refusal to disappear on cue. They spent so long anticipating your last breath that your next breath became a weapon. And now you're walking around like a haunting, a moving contradiction, a living error message. Every step you take reminds them that their predictions are worthless. They call it luck. They call it chance. They call it your surprising recovery. They can't admit the truth. They miscalculated you. They didn't realize your endurance had layers. They didn't realize you were built to outlast disasters they assumed would erase you. They mistook struggle for surrender. They mistook silence for defeat. They mistook isolation for burial. That's their problem. People who've never been tested assume that those who suffer were designed to lose. They forget that the strongest creations are forged in conditions designed to break them. They forget pressure forms diamonds, not excuses. You weren't just thrown into chaos, you were buried in it. They isolated you until even your own shadow felt unreliable. They whispered your flaws loud enough that the echo replaced your own thoughts. They made your absence feel easier to digest than your presence. They erased you from rooms that once relied on your energy. They placed bets on your expiration date. And when you staggered, when you broke, when you fell, they nodded like they were right about you all along. They wanted you to stay down so they could call it destiny, but you didn't. You rose. Slowly, quietly, brutally. Not because someone reached out a hand, not because circumstances improved, not because you found comfort. You rose because some part of you refused to hand them the satisfaction. You rose because something inside you stayed stubborn. When everything outside you screamed surrender, you rose because the collapse they expected became the resistance you needed. They wanted your death to make sense. Instead, your survival shattered logic. You became the type of person who emerges from ruins with a steadiness that scares even those who didn't help bury you. You became the type of presence that walks into a room and makes people question whether they misjudged you or themselves. You became a reminder that predictions don't define outcomes. You became the evidence that suffering doesn't guarantee defeat. You became the nightmare of those who wanted to sleep peacefully after contributing to your downfall. Let's dissect why your survival unsettles them. It's not just that you made it, it's how. You didn't return as the fragile version of yourself they manipulated. You didn't come back apologizing for existing. You didn't crawl back begging for acceptance from the people who expected you to vanish. You came back with a clarity they didn't authorize, with a strength they didn't anticipate, with a stillness that reads like a warning. You came back with the kind of energy that makes people reevaluate every word they ever said about you. They were ready to feel righteous. Your fall would have confirmed their superiority. Your disappearance would have fed their ego. Your silence would have solidified their narratives. But your survival, your unexpected, uninvited resurrection, that forces them to admit they misread the story, that forces them to confront the fact that you weren't weak, you were wounded, you weren't unstable, you were surrounded, you weren't falling apart, you were evolving under pressure so intense it purified parts of you that no soft environment ever could. And now you're carrying that transformation like an aura, not boastful, not loud, just present, sharp, undeniable. The kind of presence that makes people uncomfortable because it reflects their own cowardice. Back at them. They panic because they know you saw the worst, felt the worst, endured the worst, and still you stand, still you breathe, still you move with a calmness that shouldn't exist in someone who walked that close to emotional extinction. There's a specific type of fear you trigger now. Not fear of harm, fear of truth, fear of exposure, fear of being remembered for what they did when they thought you were too broken to survive long enough to tell the story. That's why they're silent around you. That's why they act like nothing happened. That's why they avoid eye contact, like you might read their intentions the way others read weather reports. You survived their private predictions, and now they're terrified you'll expose their public persona. But you're not interested in revenge, not because you're forgiving, because you're focused. You're not wasting energy proving your worth to people who announced your ending before you even reached your turning point. You're not explaining your existence to those who preferred you erased. You're not reopening doors that were locked during your darkest nights. You understand something they don't. Your life didn't continue by accident. It continued because you were meant to interrupt the stories written about you by people who feared your potential. And that brings us here, to this moment where you're breathing in a reality that wasn't designed to hold you anymore. You're a disruption, a glitch in their emotional software, a reminder that they don't have the authority to narrate your death, metaphorical or otherwise. They tried to close your chapter, but you were the author all along. They tried to bury you, not realizing you weren't soil. You were seed. You want to know why your survival is louder than their eulogies? Because people love a downfall until they realize the person they tried to bury is walking past them without a scratch they can use against them. They love a tragedy until the protagonist rewrites the genre. They love a ghost story until the ghost walks into the room with a pulse, a purpose, and a gaze that sees through every facade. The truth is simple. Your existence now is an act of defiance, a violation of their expectations, a quiet rebellion that shakes their confidence. They were ready to mourn you. They weren't ready to face you. They were ready to post tributes. They weren't ready to delete them. They were ready to move on. They weren't ready to be confronted by a version of you that understands everything and forgives nothing. Your survival ruins their narrative. Your strength ruins their theories. Your resilience ruins their illusions. They crafted your downfall with enthusiasm, but they must now watch you rise with disinterest. They must witness a reality where you're not just alive, you're inevitable, and you're only getting started. Because what comes next isn't a return to who you were. It's the unveiling of who they never expected you to become. A version sharpened by destruction, a version refined by pressure, A version that doesn't need validation to walk with authority. A version that understands the cost of survival and still chooses forward motion with unshakable composure. They thought your story ended. They thought your chapter closed. They thought your absence would be easier than your evolution. But the truth is unfolding now, in real time, in front of everyone who ever misjudged your endurance. You're not a comeback. You're a continuation that refuses to be interrupted again. And if they're unsettled now, wait until they see what you do with the life they assumed you wouldn't live long enough to experience. Because the paradox is this: the closer you are pushed to destruction, the more dangerous your survival becomes. The more they tried to weaken you, the stronger your instincts became. The more they tried to break you, the colder your clarity turned. The more they tried to silence you, the more undeniable your presence grew. Your survival is no longer a question. It's a statement, a warning, a prophecy they accidentally fulfilled by trying to bury you too early. And now, as everything they believed about you collapses under the weight of your existence, one truth rises to the surface with a clarity they cannot dilute. You're not meant to be gone. You're meant to be witnessed. You're meant to disrupt. You're meant to confront. You're meant to outlive every prediction, every rumor, every whispered hope that you wouldn't make it. And that's the part that terrifies them the most. Because your survival isn't just a return, it's an interruption, an intrusion into a narrative they finalized without your consent. They had closure. They had their sympathy captions drafted. They had your rest in peace emojis lined up like confetti. They had already told themselves they were good people for wishing you well on the other side. They were ready to move on. Your existence forces them to reopen files they archived. It makes them confront intentions they thought were buried under the illusion of concern. It forces them to look at you, not as a memory, but as a consequence. They didn't just assume you were gone, they announced it. They curated your downfall with the dedication of unpaid interns who thought tragedy made them important. They whispered to each other, "It's only a matter of time." They checked your posts like detectives, waiting for a clue, confirming the collapse. They sharpened their pity before you even earned it. They didn't expect to see your name pop up on their feed again, unless it was followed by a candle emoji. But life had other plans. You had other plans. And now, they're the ones gasping for explanations. You weren't supposed to be standing here with this much composure. You weren't supposed to have eyes that saw through the darkness they threw at you. You weren't supposed to speak again, think again, breathe again without the tremble of someone who barely escaped a metaphorical grave. They prepared for your disappearance. They didn't prepare for your return. Especially not this version of you. The version who isn't crawling out of ruin, but walking out like someone who discovered a secret in the dirt that they never meant for you to find. And you did find something down there, didn't you? Something about your own capacity. Something about your limits, or the lie of limits. Something about endurance that doesn't make sense to people who've never been tested by life. Beyond mild inconveniences, they live in comfort, so they assume you collapse for the same reasons they would. They forget you were forged in something they don't have the vocabulary to describe. They forget you've walked barefoot through storms that would have snapped their spine. They forget you were tempered by fire, not coddled by ease. This is why your survival feels like a violation of their worldview. In their minds, you didn't just dodge destruction, you disrespected it. You weren't supposed to rise with this much sharpness in your eyes. You weren't supposed to return looking like someone who watched the world end and took notes. You weren't supposed to pick yourself up with a calmness that reads like inevitability. They wanted you shaken, trembling, grateful for scraps of sympathy. They wanted you to reappear in pieces so they could pretend they cared about putting you back together. Instead, you reappeared whole. That's what unsettles them. They thought the montage they made for you was final. They thought the fly-high post with your old profile picture would age well. They thought the dramatic captions they rehearsed in private group chats would become their legacy of concern. Now they're sitting with the embarrassment of premature grief. They mourned you too early. And mourning someone who is still alive has consequences. It exposes the truth about motives. It reveals who wanted you gone versus who simply assumed you were weak. Most people don't understand the weight of a world that counted you out. They don't understand what it does to the human psyche to see people preparing for your end while you're still fighting for your beginning. They don't understand how it feels to breathe through the sting of abandonment while watching others treat your life like a storyline they can bet on. They don't understand how it reshapes your identity when you realize no one expects you to walk forward again. That's why your survival is more than resilience. It's rebellion. You disobeyed their expectations. You refused their conclusion. You broke the script. When they saw you fall, they didn't wonder how deeply you were wounded. They wondered how quickly the story would end. When they saw you silent, they didn't ask what you were processing. They assumed silence meant surrender. When you disappeared to put yourself back together, they translated your retreat as the final fade out. They thought they forgot you. Really, they paused you. They placed you into an imaginary grave and told themselves it was fate. Now they're forced to confront a haunting truth. You didn't die. You evolved, and evolution unnerves people who crave predictability. You are unpredictable now. Too sharp, too steady, too aware, too self-contained to be defined by anyone but yourself. You returned without needing approval, validation, or permission. You returned not humbled, but sharpened, not wounded, but aware, not weakened, but tempered. And tempering leaves a different type of strength in its wake, the kind that makes people whisper before they speak your name. You weren't supposed to survive round one, let alone rise for round two with this much presence. Your existence is now a kind of silent revenge, the kind that doesn't throw punches but shifts atmospheres. People who once felt superior to you now feel cautious around you. People who once pitied you now feel exposed. People who once underestimated you now watch their words. That's what survival does when it's unexpected. It rewires the power dynamics. And the truth is this: you didn't survive by accident. You survived because something inside you refused to comply with the script written for you. Something primitive, something ancient, something uncooperative. Something that recognizes when a story is being written without your involvement and snaps the pen in half. Something that refuses burial, refuses defeat, refuses erasure. You survived because you were never meant to disappear quietly. Now every room you enter bends in subtle ways. The air shifts. The gaze of those who counted you out moves awkwardly. Their memory of your supposed collapse collides with the reality of your presence. They're looking at you like a paradox that mocks their intuition. They're scanning you for damage that should have destroyed you. They're trying to locate the wound that should have ended your story. But you offer them nothing. No cracks, no apologies, no explanations. Your survival is not for them to understand. It's for them to witness. And now that they're witnessing it, they're realizing a terrifying truth. Your resurrection didn't reset you. It rewired you. You didn't return as the version they were used to manipulating. You didn't come back seeking their comfort or approval. You didn't rise needing them to validate your existence. You returned with a gaze that sees through their intentions, with instincts that anticipate their moves, with a self-respect that doesn't negotiate. That's why they stare at you with disbelief heavy in their eyes. That's why they're whispering behind screens again, but with a different tone this time. Not gossip, concern, not predictions, questions, not confidence, confusion. They're realizing the memorial montage wasn't just wrong. It was premature evidence of their desire to see you fail. They're realizing they didn't just think you'd fall. They wanted you to. And your survival exposes that truth without you having to say a word. The world loves a tragedy until the protagonist refuses to die on schedule. Then the world scrambles for a way to rewrite itself. That's what's happening now. You're forcing a rewrite. They can't keep mourning someone who keeps showing up alive. They can't keep posting "fly high" when the person they buried walks into the room with steady footsteps. They can't keep pretending they were supportive when their premature grief reveals their hidden expectation of your downfall. You didn't dodge death, they missed. You didn't outrun destruction, you outgrew it. You didn't survive the end, they misread the middle. And the more they realize this, the more the story tilts in your favor. The more you speak with authority that was earned in silence. The more you walk with a groundedness they cannot mimic. The more they feel the weight of ignoring a miracle when they thought it was a failure. They can't comprehend the calculation in your eyes now, the stillness in your voice, the discipline in your movements. They don't understand how someone who was pronounced emotionally dead could return with a pulse that shakes the entire room. They don't understand how someone they eulogized could walk back into their orbit without carrying the fragility they expected. It's because they never understood what was buried inside you in the first place. They assumed darkness would consume you. They didn't expect darkness to educate you. And it did. It taught you things comfort never could. Things that institutions don't teach, mentors don't articulate, and ordinary people never experience. You learned how to breathe without reassurance. You learned how to think without external validation. You learned how to stand without applause. You learned how to ground yourself without support. These are skills only acquired through collapse, and skills only the resurrected understand. You didn't just return, you returned with mastery. You returned with knowledge carved into your instincts. You returned with an internal navigation system built from pain, pressure, isolation, and clarity. This is why they don't recognize you anymore. They expected a weakened version. They expected someone softened by struggle, someone grateful for scraps of attention, someone easily manipulated. Instead, you arrived with an aura made from everything that was meant to break you. You walk differently now, not with arrogance, but with awareness. Awareness of how deeply humans can betray. Awareness of how disposable they thought you were. Awareness of how powerful your own silence can be. And awareness, real awareness, creates a presence that unsettles the comfortable. Look at the shift happening around you. People who once spoke over you now hesitate before addressing you. People who dismissed your potential now observe you with caution, trying to decode your next move. People who treated your pain like entertainment now feel the sting of your indifference. That's the power of revival. Not that you returned, but that you returned uninterested in the approval of those who predicted your absence. You didn't come back for them. You came back for yourself. And that terrifies them. Because when a person no longer needs external permission to live, There's no leverage left to use against them. You're not afraid of being alone anymore. You're not afraid of being misunderstood. You're not afraid of being underestimated. You're not afraid of being misrepresented. You already lived through every fear they tried to weaponize. There's nothing left in their arsenal that can wound someone who's already rebuilt their bones from the fractures inflicted by betrayal. Your metamorphosis threatens the ecosystem of those who rely on you staying small. They gossip in smaller circles now, not because they have updates, but because they're afraid to speak your name too loudly. They watch your posts with the tension of people studying a phenomenon they don't understand. They double-check your expression when you enter a room, hoping to glimpse vulnerability that no longer exists. They try to measure your strength using the metrics of your past, not realizing the past no longer applies. They talk about the old you like a ghost they once knew, but the version standing in front of them is no ghost. It's the reckoning. You didn't survive to return to who you were. That version of you served its purpose, endured its trials, and dissolved into the ashes where your new identity formed. You didn't survive to prove people wrong, though your existence does that effortlessly. You survived because something inside you decided that the story wasn't finished just because others said it was. You survived because your purpose is bigger than their predictions. You survived because endings written by other people are never final. Only self-authored endings count. This is why your presence carries a new kind of gravity. You don't demand respect. You command it just by existing. Your silence is sharper. Your certainty is heavier. Your boundaries are fortified. Your patience is thinner. Your intuition is stronger. Your standards are higher. You are no longer impressed by empty gestures or intimidated by empty threats. When someone crosses a line, you don't raise your voice. You raise your absence. And absence from someone who resurrected themselves is a punishment reality itself enforces. And all of this traces back to one thing. They thought you died. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, socially, mentally. They thought you were finished. They thought your collapse was final. They thought your story ended the moment the montage was edited. They thought you'd never rise again, with a spine made of the very stones they handed you. They thought you'd never reclaim your voice, your identity, your strength, your direction. They thought they would speak your name in the past tense forever. But now they have to adjust their language. You're no longer a fallen story. They're living inside your comeback. You aren't the one who disappeared. They're the ones who faded from relevance. You aren't the one who collapsed. They're the ones who miscalculated. You aren't the ghost. They're the mourners, left embarrassed when the deceased walked in alive. This is why they avoid your eyes now. Your gaze carries the weight of truths they cannot deny. They see every betrayal reflected back at them. They see every doubt they threw your way. They see every rumor they shared disguised as concern. They see every moment they distanced themselves from you when you needed them most. And there's no apology clean enough to erase the evidence in your survival. Your revival is their exposure. But you don't weaponize it. You don't need to. Your existence does the work for you. Your breath is enough to invalidate their eulogy. Your presence is enough to dismantle their predictions. Your growth is enough to rewrite the narrative. You live, and their entire storyline collapses. That's a level of poetic justice no vendetta could ever replicate. And here's what they're now starting to realize. The person they attempted to bury is not the person who returned. You're sharper, more focused, less forgiving, more observant, less available, more strategic, less sentimental. And this version of you doesn't bend the way the old version did. This version of you doesn't tolerate disrespect disguised as affection. This version of you remembers everything, every slight, every silence, every moment of abandonment, and uses that memory as a compass, not a wound. The metamorphosis wasn't a transformation into someone they can't recognize. It was a transformation into someone you were always meant to be. The destruction stripped away the illusions. The darkness sharpened the instincts. The abandonment fortified the spine. The rumors clarified the truth. The isolation intensified the identity. Every force used to break you became the ingredient that refined you. So now you move through the world differently. You're not eager to explain yourself. You're not desperate to be understood. You're not interested in defending your choices. You're not trying to win people's approval. You don't chase closure. You don't seek validation. You don't negotiate your worth. You simply exist with a quiet authority that came from earning your own resurrection. And people feel it. The same ones who once whispered about your downfall now fall silent when you enter the frame. The same ones who once pitied you now fear your detachment. The same ones who once directed your narrative now stumble to form sentences around you. Because your survival did not humble you. It liberated you from the need to play small. This is the phase where you realize something profound. You never needed them to believe in you. You needed them to doubt you so you could build belief from scratch. You needed them to leave so you could learn how to stand alone. You needed them to underestimate you so you could outgrow their reach. You needed them to assume you were gone so you could return without their expectations holding you hostage. You didn't just dodge death. They dodged accountability. They dodged the truth of their intentions. They dodged the reality of their role in your collapse. They dodged the consequences of their indifference. But your survival brings the truth back to their doorstep. And truth, when delivered by someone they thought was finished, carries the weight of a prophecy fulfilled. This is where the story sharpens. Because metamorphosis isn't the end. It's the threshold. The world has seen your return. They have felt the disruption of your presence. They have watched the narrative collapse. But they haven't seen what comes next. They haven't witnessed the next evolution. They haven't understood the full extent of your rebirth. They haven't realized that surviving was just the first act. What comes next is the ascension. And the hint of that ascension already exists in your silence. Your clarity, your energy. They know something is coming. They feel it. They can't name it, but they sense the shift. Your survival wasn't a mistake. It was a signal, a warning, a declaration that the version of you they once knew is gone, and the version standing before them is not here to prove anything. You're here to become everything they never imagined you could be. And if your unexpected return unsettled them, they are not ready for what's about to emerge next. Because what comes after resurrection is not recovery, it's dominion. The kind of dominion earned in the underworld of your own suffering. The kind built from rebuilding yourself without spectators, without cheerleaders, without anyone checking in to see if your heart was still beating. You rose in silence, and silence has a way of amplifying everything once the world realizes you're not supposed to be here. That's why every room feels too small for you now. Why every interaction feels too shallow. Why every old connection feels brittle in your hands. You don't fit into the spaces that once held you, because those spaces were designed for someone who no longer exists. There is a gravity about you now, a pull they can't articulate, but cannot deny. You feel heavier, yet you move lighter. You speak less, yet your words cut deeper. You stand still, Yet your presence shifts the entire atmosphere. People look at you and feel a gap between what they believed about you and what they are now forced to confront. That gap is your evolution. That discomfort is your power. They don't know how to behave around someone who survived a narrative they already closed. They don't know how to address someone who returned stronger than the version they mourned. This is where the world reveals itself. Those who celebrated your supposed ending now shrink in your presence. Those who pitied you now feel uneasy asking how you're doing. Those who doubted you now panic at the thought of being remembered for their role in your collapse. And the ones who stayed silent, they're the most uneasy of all, because silence is complicity, and your survival exposes it with surgical precision. But here's the part they never prepared for. Your ascension doesn't revolve around them. It's not fueled by revenge, not aimed at inflicting emotional consequences, not driven by a need to be acknowledged. Your ascension is internal. It is personal. It is sacred. It is the natural evolution of someone who bled in private and rebuilt without witnesses. Revenge would be too small for someone who outgrew the grave they dug. What you're becoming is beyond their imagination, beyond their expectations, beyond their comprehension. Your resurrection wasn't meant to humble them. It was meant to unbind you. And now that you're unbound, you're beginning to understand what your survival truly means. It means you no longer move from fear, but from intention. It means you no longer speak to be understood, but to be clear. It means you no longer chase connection, you choose it. It means you no longer tolerate proximity from people who treat your presence casually. It means you no longer measure your worth by how many hands are clapping, but by how steady you can walk without applause. They expected you to shrink after everything. Instead, you expanded. They expected you to hesitate. Instead, you sharpened. They expected you to walk quietly. Instead, your silence became a language they still haven't learned to translate. They expected you to return diminished. Instead, you returned sculpted by pain into something that no longer resembles fragility. And that is the quiet terror you carry into every space now. You don't need anything from them. Not their attention, not their belief, not their permission. Their fly-high posts were meant to close your chapter, but instead they closed their access. You saw the truth of who they were when they thought you were done. You saw the hierarchy of care, the order of allegiance, the selective empathy. You saw how quickly people distance themselves when they think your fall might stain them. And you saw how easily they mourned someone who was still alive. You'll never forget that, and you'll never operate the same again. This is why your energy feels untouchable now. You are not detached, you are precise. You are not cold, you are discerning. You are not distant, you are selective with where you place your warmth. A person who survived premature eulogies doesn't open their doors the same way. A person who saw the world prepare for their ending doesn't return with the same naivety. You learned the truth the painful way. Most people don't want to help resurrect you. They just want front row seats to your downfall. But your return forced them to confront the one thing they never intended to face. You are not disposable. You are not temporary. You are not fragile. You are not a storyline for their amusement. You are not a tragedy they get to retell. You are a presence that refuses to be erased. You are a pulse that refuses to be silenced. You are a story that refuses to end on someone else's page. And now that you stand here, alive, composed, grounded, they don't know where to place you anymore. You don't fit their narratives. You don't fit their labels. You don't fit their comfort zones. You don't fit their old image of you. You're too large for the box they buried you in. You're too aware for the traps they once used. You're too elevated to engage in battles they still think matter. Your existence is a correction to every lie they told about your ending. And as the world adjusts to the shock of your presence, something deeper awakens in you. A purpose that wasn't visible before. A clarity that couldn't exist until death, metaphorical or otherwise, brushed too close. A knowing that came only after watching everyone prepare for a future without you. That knowing is the blueprint for your ascension. It's the internal command that pulls you forward. It's the calm voice that whispers, "You survived for a reason." And now, the reason begins. Your next chapter doesn't start with applause. It starts with alignment. It starts with you choosing what deserves your time, your energy, your presence. It starts with understanding that the world you're stepping into is not the world you left. You're stepping into a reality shaped by your own rebirth, a reality where you move differently because you see differently, a reality where you build with intention because you recognize the cost of collapse, a reality where you operate with a depth that only the resurrected possess. This is where your story shifts from survival to sovereignty. You are no longer proving resilience. You are embodying inevitability. You are no longer escaping endings. You are authoring beginnings. You are no longer outrunning destruction. You are outgrowing the environments that once made destruction possible. You are no longer fighting to be heard. You are speaking with the weight of someone who doesn't need agreement. The version of you that emerged from the grave they prepared is not a comeback story. It's a reminder that real strength is quiet, unannounced, and irreversible. You didn't return to win them over. You returned because your journey wasn't done. You returned because your purpose isn't negotiable. You returned because the world still needs to see what a miracle looks like when it refuses to be misunderstood. And if your survival shocked them, your ascension will dismantle them. Because this isn't the story of someone who dodged death. This is the story of someone who turned death into a detour. Someone who walked out of their own ending with a calmness that rewrote the definition of endurance. Someone who rose from a grave people celebrated too early and kept walking as if burial was just another lesson in disguise. Your memorial montage was finished. Your name was posted with wings. Your image was framed as a memory. But your heartbeat didn't get the memo. And now the world has to adjust to the reality they tried to erase. You're not gone. You're not broken. You're not finished. You're alive. You're aware. And you're becoming unstoppable. This is your rebirth. This is your reclamation. This is your arrival into the version of yourself you were always meant to become. The world mourned too early. Now it must witness you fully.